Well, that was one hell of a BlizzCon conference this year. And the big question that I have right now that I'm going to help answer for you is, based off of this performance, do you think Activision is a good stock to buy? I'm going to share with you my analysis on this whole shebang. Let's do this. What's up, y'all? It's John Master Lee here. Now that BlizzCon 2019 has wrapped up, let's take a look back on how well this event worked out for Blizzard. And in the larger picture, Activision. After all, Blizzard is a part of Activision. Now, Blizzard's revenue is actually a big part of Activision's overall revenue. Now, unfortunately, they don't really break out the details in terms of how each game performs and how much of the market share they represent in terms of revenue and profitability. But in terms of player base, the number of active users in Blizzard's camp is about the same as the active user base in Activision's user camp, partly because Activision includes Call of Duty. Now, I should say that it doesn't include their acquisition of King, which is a mobile game developer, which has about 10 times more active users. Let's get a little bit deeper into this analysis as we first watch this video highlight from them.
It feels really great to be able to say the words Diablo 4 out loud.
Now, the Diablo 4 announcement, definitely the big one here this year at BlizzCon. And I think a lot of people would have argued that had they announced this last year along with the mobile game, things would have been very different in terms of reception.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Unfortunately, Diablo Immortal had about a good year to simmer in a stew of troll-like behavior. At this point, it's just become a running joke in the industry. So no matter what they're going to announce at this point and what they're going to showcase for Diablo Immortal, I think people are just going to bash it. But Diablo 4 definitely looks really good. It's a kind of game that looks like a major step up from what it was before. And I think the biggest thing that was shocking about Diablo 4 was that the atmosphere for the game looks truly dark and grim.
We are going back to the franchise's darker roots.
Hell is coming. Hell is coming.
Now, from a financial standpoint, that's a really difficult thing to summarize in terms of what you think that's going to have an effect on the bottom line. And the bigger issue here is that a lot of investors, quite frankly, were looking for more information regarding stuff that they can make a forecast again. There was no announcement of price. There was no announcement of a launch date. None of the things that they need to be able to give you a recommendation of whether or not to buy the stock. So that left a lot of analysts hanging. I would rate the announcement for Diablo 4 as an A- in terms of being able to get the crowd excited, get analysts interested. It would have been a solid A had they revealed more of the solid details regarding price and availability. So the Overwatch 2 announcement definitely was a big shocker for me. Although if you watch my reaction to the cinematic trailer and the gameplay trailer, it really is the only logical step that Blizzard can take moving forward.
Does this mean Overwatch is back?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Because Overwatch was a retail product, which is a very difficult product to maintain ongoing viability when you're compared to all the dominant free-to-play PvP type of games out there, just creating a sequel that changed the formula would have been hugely problematic. I think the player base would have revolted. So by introducing whole new gameplay modes in a sequel, it allows them to not only keep the player base that is playing Overwatch 1 still active, I think it actually could be pretty effective in pulling in new players. They found the PvP environment a little bit too daunting for them, and that a more cooperative gameplay mode could actually make things a lot more of a smoother transition into this world. I'm actually one of those gamers. I really love PvE type of gaming experience, and I would absolutely buy Overwatch 2. But in terms of thinking of how well this game will perform, I don't think it would actually outsell the original Overwatch game, mainly because the original Overwatch game was a phenomenon. It was announced at the right time. Blizzard really didn't have much else in the pipeline, so all attention was focused on this. The competitive scene at that time really didn't have a lot of other players in it. This was also the dawn and age of streaming, so Overwatch got a lot of playtime from streamers, which really helped propel it to a huge game. I think the competitive landscape is going to make it much more difficult for Overwatch 2 to generate those same numbers. But I think it will help extend the franchise into the next 5 years or so. Again, the big issue here for analysts is that no date regarding when this thing is coming out or what the price is, which is going to make it hard for them to make any sort of forecast. I would give Overwatch 2 a solid B+ rating. I think there's a lot of people who are really interested in this. I do think it's a bit more of an incremental bump in terms of pulling in new users compared to the original Overwatch game, which was a phenomenon in the gaming industry. But even incremental game for one of the top games of all time is going to be a huge hit for Blizzard. All right, so World of Warcraft is one of those staple games that you really have to think of it as a very different business model and have a very different set of expectations from investors. It is essentially a cash cow that is slowly dying in its later years. What you're looking at here is churn. How many players are not playing anymore on a month in, month out basis? We know that for World of Warcraft, that player base has been shrinking now for a couple of years. And in fact, Activision/Blizzard doesn't even announce player-based information in their financial reports anymore because it's not sexy to announce how your player base is shrinking. I remember the days when Blizzard was so happy to announce, wow, we're getting this many more subscribers. And yeah, the minute they stopped doing that, because everything was in decline. Now, decline is a normal part of a product life cycle. It's not to say anything wrong with that. The whole game, though, is about how do you mitigate that? How do you get people to come back? Expansion packs like Shadowlands are great ways of doing it. And I think actually the big part of what Shadowlands is going to get people interested in coming back is if they go back and fix a lot of the things in the world that are essentially feel like they're broken or outdated at this point. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so many expansion packs that have been released over the years that you really have to go and change the way that things level up to make the grind feel less like a grind. How many levels are there now in World of Warcraft? Like over 120, 30, 40, 50? I mean, like it's a lot. I mean, it's literally about double what it was when the initial game came out. So you really have to retweak everything, which is a daunting prospect for a game this big. It's so easy to break more and to fix more, but I think it's the right move for them to do if they really want to maintain the player base. I think it would be an unwise move for them to dramatically overhaul the game with a whole new engine and everything like that, because the amount of money that's going to take to do that is only going to generate an incremental people to come back and play. They fundamentally have to work on a whole new type of game in order to get people excited for this next generation stuff. World of Warcraft, quite frankly, if you look at the gameplay trailer, it just looks old at this point. In fact, I feel like half the zones look like muddied water because it's, you know, set in this undead world. It's a lot of browns, a lot of grays. It's just ugly looking. There are some zones that do look really pretty, and that's thanks to the artists who are able to make very vibrant looking environments out of honestly very low poly / textured type of situations that they're stuck with right now. So churn's a big thing, but I can tell you right now, if they can manage churn well, I remember when I was working at Sega and they had this long-running game, Phantasy Star Online, that in the US, they were just thinking about killing off. But when I started to crunch the numbers and I took a look at it, it was actually a profitable game month in and month out. It was churning about 5% every single month. So you give it a year and yeah, I can see how the analysts were going, you know what, this game is going to be irrelevant in a year. We might as well just kill it rather than milk it down to the bone where resources could be used for a bunch of other stuff. But I was able to prove and show them that, you know what, through a lot of community events, if you can do things that keep the active player base stay in the game, you can cut that churn down to half. And you know what you could do with that? You could literally extend the product life cycle an extra 2 to 3 years, which is what they did. And to this day, it's literally one of the most profitable franchises they got, still running for Sega. Maintaining a game like this is not easy. So I definitely give kudos to developers for being able to pull it off and keep it still relevant in an industry today where so many new games are announced. In terms of announcements, I just give it a solid B-. Honestly, like I said, there's nothing new here. It's about as average of an announcement you can make. The whole Underworld thing is pretty cool, but based off of player reception, there's been a lot of downloads and comments from people on all the videos that have posted up. So I don't know if it's because they don't like the gameplay that's being showed or what people seem to be suggesting is that they're kind of tired of this Sylvana story angle. Like, it's just been played out and there's nothing interesting there. I don't know if that's enough to change buying behavior. I think it's going to do just as well as every other expansion that they've released over the last 5 years or so.
World of Warcraft Shadowlands is coming next year, and it will be available for pre-purchase today.
All right, so Hearthstone is one of those games that continues to be a huge cash cow for Blizzard as well. It's one of those games I think actually have a very long life because you don't need fancy graphics. It's a very complex game. The competitive scene continues to be very vibrant, and it continues to be one of the biggest games that's streamed online.
The open beta for this new mode is going to start on November 12th.
The new 8-player mode is really interesting. I think it's going to add a lot more longevity and variety to this gameplay, and perhaps even pull in some new gamers who have found playing by themselves in competitive mode to be a little bit daunting. But overall, nothing dramatic about what's going on here. Everything's very iterative this year for this particular franchise. Very cool that a female did win the Hearthstone competition this year. Kudos to her. I do hope it continues to bring in more diversity in terms of who wants to play and compete in this particular type of game. But other than that, I would give Hearthstone a solid B in terms of how players reacted, and also in terms of financial expectations from this game. It's just going to continue to coast and do really well.
Hearthstone history!
In terms of the announcements that were made that we think that would have a financial impact to the company, and by financial impact I mean, do you think analysts are going to rate what happened favorably or not? Well, I think the overall results are hold the course. Most analysts pretty much have stuck to their guns in terms of what they have already forecasted. And usually when it comes to stock, there's 1 to 3 forecasts of buy, hold, or sell. And the majority of analysts that cover Activision, which is the owner of Blizzard, have a buy/hold rating. So that's generally pretty positive. No one's changed it to sell. That being said, most analysts are disappointed that not enough information was released for them to be able to latch on to be able to change their forecast or to be able to up it or increase it. You have to sort of think of it this way, right? Analysts honestly are a lot like journalists. They're looking for something juicy to sink their teeth into, because when there's something juicy, people want to buy the reports that they put together to figure out whether or not stocks are worth buying or not. These analysts live or die based off of their recommendations, and if their recommendation continues to be hold, well, nothing's exciting about that. No one's going to change their behavior. Changed behavior is what gets the market moving, whether it's a lot of buying or a lot of selling. Analysts live for that kind of scenario. So as of right now, the stock is pretty flat since BlizzCon had gone on. It did actually drop a couple of percentage points, but it's leveled back out again, and it's about where it was before. The stock this year is up actually about 20%, a pretty significant game in a 1-year scenario, but it was also down about 20% from late last year, so it's about all even out in the end. Right now, things seem to be in a rather stable holding pattern for Activision. All right, y'all, if you found this interesting, let me know. All right, y'all, peace out.